She kicked out a beggar from her party, unaware he built the estate. She stood there in her designer gown, watching security drag him away from her party. Not just any beggar, an old man asking for water. A man she called disgusting in front of Lagos high society. A man whose calloused hands she mocked, whose dignity she crushed. She wasn't supposed to check the morning mail. She didn't expect to see his name on legal documents as the owner. She thought she had leased from wealthy investors. But what she discovered shattered everything she believed about success. The vagrant at her gate? He was Emmanuel Emeka Okafor, the architect who built the entire estate. Every marble step she walked on, every fountain she posed beside, every room she celebrated in. He designed it all with his own hands. The man she humiliated had lost everything through betrayal. The man she cast out was visiting his stolen masterpiece. The man she called worthless had created her moment of glory. Now she's not just a party host, she's a woman facing the mirror of her own cruelty. Respect his dignity or live with the shame. Either way, karma just served its final course. This is the story of what happens when pride meets its maker, literally. Amara's silk gown catches the evening breeze as she stands on marble steps that gleam like polished bone. The Riverside Estate spreads before her like a kingdom she's conquered, crystal chandeliers casting liquid gold through towering windows, their light dancing across faces that matter in Lagos society. She adjusts her diamond necklace, the weight of it familiar and reassuring against her throat. Tonight isn't just a party, it's her coronation as the woman who secured the impossible venue for her daughter's wedding reception. But something moves in the shadows beyond the ornate gates, something that will shatter her perfect evening into 1,000 razor-sharp pieces. The sound of champagne glasses clinking mingles with designer heels clicking on Italian marble, each step echoing off walls that have witnessed decades of power plays and social climbing. Amara's eyes sweep across her guests: oil executives, government ministers, society wives dripping in jewelry that costs more than most people's homes. She breathes in the scent of imported roses and expensive cologne, her chest swelling with the intoxicating drug of social approval. These people whisper about her connections, her influence, her ability to secure what others could only dream of. She raises her crystal flute, ready to toast her greatest triumph, unaware that the very foundation beneath her Christian Louboutin heels holds secrets that will soon turn her victory into her greatest humiliation. Golden light filters through ancient trees that frame the estate like cathedral pillars, their shadows stretching across manicured lawns where her guests mingle and pose for Instagram photos. Amara's daughter twirls in her engagement dress, the fabric catching light like captured starbeams, while her future son-in-law charms potential business partners near the fountain. Everything is picture perfect, choreographed to the second, designed to cement Amara's reputation as the woman who makes impossible things happen. The live band strikes up another song, their music floating across terraces adorned with flowers that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. But beyond the celebration's glow, a figure approaches through the gathering dusk, moving slowly but purposefully toward the gates that guard this slice of paradise. Steam rises from silver serving platters arranged across tables draped in imported silk, while servers in crisp white uniforms weave between clusters of Nigeria's elite like dancers in an expensive ballet. Amara catches fragments of conversation. Praise for the venue, speculation about how much she paid, whispered admiration for her taste and connections. Her smile stretches wider with each compliment, each envious glance from wives who couldn't secure such a prestigious location for their own events. The estate's architecture draws gasps of appreciation: hand-carved pillars that reach toward the sky, marble floors imported from Italy, water features that seem to sing with their own ancient music. She basks in reflected glory, claiming ownership of beauty she had nothing to do with creating. Shadows grow longer as the sun begins its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that make the estate look like something from a fairy tale. Amara moves through her guests like a queen among subjects, accepting congratulations and compliments with practiced grace. Her phone buzzes constantly with messages from friends unable to attend, begging for photos and details about the exclusive venue. She poses beside the fountain, its water catching the dying light like liquid diamonds, while professional photographers capture every angle of her triumph. The granite walls seem to approve of her success, standing as silent witnesses to her social victory. But those same walls remember different hands that shaped them, different voices that dreamed them into existence, different hearts that poured love into every architectural detail. The evening air carries the scent of jasmine from gardens planted by hands she's never imagined, while string lights begin to twinkle like earthbound stars across terraces designed by a mind she's never acknowledged. Amara's laughter rings out across the courtyard as a particularly influential guest praises her incredible taste in selecting such a magnificent venue. She doesn't mention that she simply signed a lease agreement, that she had nothing to do with choosing the imported marble or positioning the water features or planning the perfect sightlines from every room. In her mind, securing the lease makes her the architect of this evening's magic. The irony is sharp enough to cut glass, but she's blind to it, drunk on champagne and compliments and the heady rush of social triumph. Night begins to embrace the estate like a velvet curtain, and Amara stands at the pinnacle of her success, surrounded by everything she's worked to achieve: respect, envy, influence, and the admiration of people whose approval she's craved her entire adult life. The crystal in her hand catches the light from a dozen sources, fractured into rainbow fragments that seem to promise infinite possibilities. Her daughter's laughter floats across the courtyard like music, her future son-in-law charms another potential client, and the guest list reads like a who's who of Nigerian power and wealth. This is her moment, her night, her triumph over every social climber who doubted her ability to reach these heights. But triumph, like fine crystal, is more fragile than it appears, and sometimes the most devastating breaks come from the most unexpected sources. Papa Emeka's weathered hand grips his walking stick as his bare feet find familiar paths through memories that rush back like floodwaters. The cobblestone driveway beneath him tells stories his heart remembers, each stone placed with intention, each curve designed to welcome visitors to what was once his greatest achievement. His clothes hang loose on a frame that time and hardship have carved down to bone and sinew, but his eyes hold depths that speak of wisdom earned through loss too profound for most people to comprehend. The distant sound of celebration draws him forward like a moth to flame, even though he knows the light might burn. Something about tonight feels different, feels like a door opening after decades of being locked. The estate's iron gates loom before him, their ornate metalwork catching the last rays of golden sunlight that filter through leaves he once selected personally for their color and shape. Papa Emeka's fingers trace patterns in the air, remembering when these gates were just sketches on blueprint paper, when his younger hands drew the curved designs that now stand as monuments to craftsmanship most people never notice. His walking stick, carved from indigenous wood by his own father decades ago, taps against stones that were laid according to his specifications, fitted together with mathematical precision that still makes his architect's heart sing with pride. But pride, he's learned, is a luxury that poverty strips away layer by painful layer. Amara's silhouette appears in the distance, her designer gown flowing like liquid silver as she moves across terraces he designed to catch evening light exactly as it falls now. The contrast between them is stark as a photograph, her heels clicking authority against marble while his bare feet whisper stories of journeys through dust and desperation. She turns toward the gate, her face transforming from social smile to something cold and sharp when she spots his approaching figure. Her nostrils flare as if bad odor has invaded her perfect evening, her body language shifting from gracious hostess to guardian protecting her territory from invasion. The distance between them might be measured in meters, but it spans the gulf between two entirely different worlds. Music drifts across the courtyard from speakers positioned according to acoustic calculations Papa Emeka once spent weeks perfecting, while crystal chandeliers, hung at heights he determined would cast optimal light, illuminate faces that have never known what it means to lose everything. His memories overlay the present scene like double-exposed film, where Amara sees prestigious venue, he sees countless hours of planning, designing, and building with his own hands. Every architectural detail that draws admiration tonight bears his creative fingerprints, from the precisely angled walkways that create perfect sight lines to the water features positioned to provide both visual beauty and the sound of flowing water that calms the human soul. But memory, like everything else he once owned, has become a burden too heavy for his bent shoulders to carry. The evening air carries scents that trigger floods of remembrance, jasmine from gardens he planted as seedlings, the particular mixture of stone dust and growing things that meant home when he still had one to return to each night. Papa Emeka pauses at the gate, his hand resting on metal that still bears the maker's mark he specified, still warm from sunshine that falls across grounds he once walked as owner and creator. His eyes trace architectural lines that flowed from his imagination to reality through blueprints and construction crews and countless decisions about materials and colors and proportions. The estate stands before him like a child he raised who no longer recognizes his face, beautiful and strange and heartbreakingly familiar all at once. Shadows begin to lengthen as the sun starts its descent toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold that make the estate look like something from a dream Papa Emeka used to have when sleep came easier and hope wasn't a luxury he couldn't afford. Amara moves closer, her movement predatory and purposeful, her expression hardening into the kind of contempt that society teaches the successful to feel toward those who appear to have failed. The space between them shrinks with each step, the distance measured not just in physical feet but in the social gulf between the woman who leases his creation and the man who dreamed it into existence. Her designer fragrance clashes with the honest scent of someone who bathes when he can find safe water, whose clothes tell stories of survival rather than success. The moment stretches taut as violin string as two worlds prepare to collide, her world of assumed superiority built on foundations she never laid, and his world of invisible dignity carved from loss too deep for tears. Papa Emeka straightens slightly, drawing on reserves of strength that poverty couldn't steal, preparing to approach the gates of what was once his kingdom with the humility that hardship has taught him and the quiet authority that creation grants its maker. But authority without power is just memory, and memory without recognition is just pain wearing different clothes. The collision, when it comes, will shatter assumptions like crystal hitting concrete, but neither of them knows that yet. Papa Emeka's voice carries the gentle authority of age as he extends a trembling hand toward gates that once opened at his approach, back when his signature on checks meant something more than faded ink on worthless paper. "Please, my sister," his words flow like honey over gravel, each syllable weighted with the kind of respect that comes from understanding how quickly fortune can change hands. His request is simple: shelter from the evening chill, perhaps a cup of water to soothe a throat dried by too many nights sleeping rough. But simplicity, he's learned, is often the most difficult thing for complexity to understand. The distance between his outstretched hand and the woman beyond the gate might as well be an ocean, measured not in feet but in assumptions about worth and dignity and who deserves basic human kindness. Amara's face transforms like marble struck by lightning, her features hardening into something cold and sharp enough to cut glass. "Are you mad?" The words explode from her lips like bullets designed to wound, each syllable aimed at the old man's remaining dignity. Her voice rises above the gentle sounds of celebration behind her, drawing attention from guests who turn to witness this assault on their evening's perfection. She gestures toward his worn clothes, his calloused hands, his humble bearing as if they're evidence in a case she's already decided. The silk of her gown rustles with indignation while his simple shirt hangs loose on bones that tell stories of too many meals missed, too many nights when shelter was just another luxury beyond his reach. "I only seek a moment's kindness," Papa Emeka continues, his dignity intact despite the verbal assault, his words measured and respectful even as they fall on ears that have forgotten how to hear humanity in voices that carry no social currency. He speaks of knowing these grounds, of walking these paths when they existed only in his imagination and on blueprint paper that bore his signature. But his claims sound like delusion to ears trained to judge worth by appearance, like fantasy spun by someone whose grip on reality has loosened along with his grip on worldly possessions. The irony cuts deeper than any blade. The man who dreamed these gardens into existence now begs for permission to stand among the flowers he chose and planted with his own hands. Amara's laughter rings across the courtyard like breaking glass, sharp enough to make nearby guests wince and look away from the cruel spectacle their hostess has become. "You know this place?" Her disbelief is total and theatrical, performed for an audience that has gathered to witness what they assume will be swift justice served to someone who dared disturb their refined evening. She points at his weathered face, his work-worn hands, his clothes that have seen better decades, as if poverty is a crime that disqualifies someone from having a history worth acknowledging. The estate's walls stand silent witness to this character assassination, their stones remembering different voices, different laughter, different hands that shape them with love rather than lease agreements. The old man's shoulders sag slightly under the weight of her contempt, but something unbreakable in his core refuses to bend completely. His eyes hold depths that speak of blueprints drawn by candlelight, of construction crews managed with firm kindness, of a time when his name on architectural plans meant excellence and innovation. But those depths might as well be invisible to someone who sees only surface, only the present moment stripped of context in history. Papa Emeka's walking stick taps against stones he once chose for their color and durability, each tap echoing like a heartbeat that refuses to stop despite everything that's been taken from him. The sound seems to mock Amara's assumptions, but she's too blinded by prejudice to hear what the very ground beneath their feet is trying to tell her. "Look at yourself." Amara's voice reaches a pitch that makes the crystal in nearby guests' hands vibrate with sympathetic resonance, her words designed to strip away whatever remains of the old man's sense of self-worth. She gestures dismissively at his appearance as if external circumstances define internal value, as if the clothes someone wears determine the content of their character. Her designer gown flows around her like liquid arrogance while his simple garments hang on him like flags of surrender. But appearances, like first impressions, often lie with practiced skill. The woman who has leased his masterpiece sees only failure where success once stood, only worthlessness where genius once created beauty that will outlast them both. The evening air grows thick with tension as two realities collide, her reality where worth is measured by bank balances and social connections, and his reality where value runs deeper than material possessions could ever reach. Papa Emeka looks at the estate rising behind her like a dream made manifest, seeing not just buildings and gardens but memories of a time when his name meant something, when his vision transformed empty land into architectural poetry. But memory without recognition is just pain wearing formal clothes, and pain is a language that people like Amara refuse to learn until it's spoken in their own lives. The collision between dignity and disgrace is about to create shockwaves that will reshape everything both of them think they know about success, failure, and what it really means to own something beautiful. Designer handbags clutch like weapons as Lagos society's finest gravitate toward the unfolding drama, their movements coordinated as a pack of well-dressed predators sensing wounded prey. Mrs. Adunni leads the charge, her gold jewelry catching lamplight as she adjusts her head wrap with theatrical precision, her eyes bright with the cruel joy that comes from witnessing someone else's humiliation. "Can you imagine the audacity?" she whispers, but her whisper carries the weight of a shout, designed to reach every ear within a 10-foot radius. Her voice drips with the kind of righteous indignation that masks deeper insecurities, the fear that she herself might one day stand on the wrong side of society's invisible barriers. The crowd forms a semicircle around the gate like Romans gathering for gladiatorial combat, except their entertainment comes from watching dignity get devoured by assumptions. Phone screens light up like electronic fireflies as younger guests capture moments that will later become social media content about maintaining standards and knowing your place. Their manicured fingers dance across screens, typing captions that will turn Papa Emeka's humiliation into hashtags and his pain into content for followers who measure worth by likes and shares. The appetite for public degradation is insatiable, each recorded second another morsel for the content machine that feeds on human suffering dressed up as moral superiority. Their designer dresses rustle with excitement as they position themselves for optimal filming angles, treating a man's dignity like raw material for viral videos that will be forgotten by morning but will leave scars that last lifetimes. In my day, beggars knew their place, Mrs. Adunni announces to her circle of sycophants, her fan working overtime as if the very presence of poverty might contaminate the evening's refined atmosphere. The murmurs ripple through the crowd like poison in clear water, each judgment adding another layer to the toxic cloud gathering around Papa Emeka. Their assumptions flow freely, speculations about drug addiction, mental illness, criminal history, anything that might explain why someone would dare to disturb their carefully curated bubble of privilege. The estate's walls have heard these kinds of conversations before, but tonight they seem to lean in closer, as if even stone and mortar understand that something profound is about to shatter. Young socialites compete to deliver the most cutting observations, their voices pitched to carry authority they haven't earned and wisdom they don't possess. Probably just looking for handouts, one declares while adjusting her designer clutch that costs more than most people's rent. Another adds, security should have stopped him at the main road, as if proximity to poverty might somehow infect their evening with uncomfortable truths about how quickly circumstances can change. Their laughter has sharp edges that seem designed to cut, each giggle another small cruelty added to the growing pile of assumptions and judgments. They've never learned that fortunes will turns for everyone, that the distance between penthouse and street can sometimes be measured in single devastating moments. The collective cruelty becomes a living thing, growing stronger as it feeds on each new voice that joins the chorus of condemnation. Papa Emeka stands at the center of this storm like an ancient tree that has survived countless hurricanes, his weathered face a study in quiet dignity while arrows of judgment fly through the air around him. His walking stick remains steady in his grip, that piece of carved wood becoming a symbol of something that won't bend despite the hurricane of hatred swirling around him. The irony is thick enough to choke on. The man they're condemning as worthless created the very beauty that draws their admiration, designed the very spaces where they now gather to destroy him with words. The feeding frenzy of superiority masks deeper fears that none of them dare acknowledge, the terror that respectability is more fragile than they want to believe, that circumstances beyond anyone's control can strip away everything they've built their identities around. Each cruel observation is really a prayer to whatever gods protect the privileged, a desperate attempt to maintain the illusion that terrible things only happen to people who deserve them. They clutch their designer accessories like talismans against the possibility that poverty might be contagious, that failure might spread like a virus through close contact. But viruses, like truth, have ways of finding even the most carefully protected targets. Papa Emeka's presence challenges every comfortable assumption they've made about success and failure, about who deserves respect and who deserves contempt. His quiet dignity in the face of their assault becomes an accusation against their behavior, a mirror reflecting ugliness they don't want to see in themselves. The estate around them begins to feel like a witness to their cruelty, its architectural beauty becoming a silent rebuke to the ugliness pouring from their perfectly painted lips. But mirrors, like architectural masterpieces, sometimes hold secrets that take time to reveal, and when they do, the reflection can shatter more than just illusions. Taiwo's starched uniform suddenly feels too tight against his skin as sweat beads along his collar despite the evening's gentle breeze. He's worked the Riverside Estate security detail for 3 years, long enough to know every corner of the grounds, every sightline that matters, every protocol for handling unwanted visitors. But something about this old man's bearing troubles him in ways his training manual never covered, the way Papa Emeka's eyes seem to catalog architectural details with intimate familiarity, how his weathered hands gesture toward landscape features as if he's greeting old friends rather than seeing them for the first time. The security guard's instincts war with his orders, creating a tension that makes his hand hesitate over the radio clip to his belt. Tonight feels different, charged with electricity that has nothing to do with the approaching storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The beggar's eyes hold knowledge that goes beyond casual observation, a kind of intimate awareness of the estate's layout that sends cold fingers walking down Taiwo's spine despite the warm evening air. Papa Emeka seems to know which stones in the walkway are slightly loose, where the garden path curves to provide optimal views of the fountain, how the evening light falls across the main terrace at exactly this time of day. It's the kind of knowledge that comes from years of careful attention, from someone who either lived here or spent considerable time studying every detail with professional interest. The guard's training screams that appearances can be deceiving, that threats often come disguised as harmless old men with walking sticks and gentle voices. But his gut whispers something entirely different, something that makes his standard protocols feel suddenly inadequate. Amara's voice cuts through his contemplation like a blade designed for maximum damage, her words sharp enough to make nearby birds take flight from their perches in trees that frame the estate like living pillars. Remove this man immediately. Her command carries the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience, the kind of voice that expects no questions and tolerates no hesitation. The social pressure from her guests adds weight to her words, dozens of eyes watching to see how quickly their security will restore order to their perfect evening. Taiwo's hand moves toward his radio, muscle memory taking over even as his mind continues to process details that don't fit the standard narrative of Vagrant Disturbs Party. The dichotomy between duty and instinct creates a fault line in his chest that threatens to crack under pressure. How dare he disturb my guests? Amara's indignation reaches crescendo pitch, her designer gown rustling with righteous fury as she gestures toward Papa Emeka like he's something contagious that might contaminate their refined atmosphere. The crowd behind her murmurs approval, their collective judgment adding momentum to her demands for immediate action. Taiwo feels the weight of their expectations settling on his shoulders like lead blankets, the social contract that makes him responsible for maintaining their comfort and protecting their sense of security. His radio crackles with static as if it's eager to be used, but something in the old man's posture, straight back despite his obvious poverty, gives him pause. The guard has ejected dozens of trespassers over the years, but none of them carried themselves with this particular combination of humility and quiet authority. Papa Emeka meets Taiwo's eyes with understanding that transcends the immediate situation, a look that seems to acknowledge the impossible position the younger man finds himself in. "It's all right, my son," the old man says softly, his voice carrying paternal warmth despite the cruel treatment he's receiving. The words hit Taiwo like a physical blow, reminding him of his own grandfather's voice, of lessons about treating elders with respect regardless of their circumstances. Papa Emeka's acceptance of the inevitable doesn't feel like defeat, it feels like grace under pressure, like someone who's learned to navigate life's cruelties without letting them destroy his essential humanity. The gentle acceptance in his tone only deepens the guard's growing certainty that nothing about this situation fits the templates his training provided. The walking stick in Papa Emeka's hand draws Taiwo's attention. Not an improvised weapon or a prop for manipulation, but a piece of craftsmanship that speaks of traditions older than the estate's imported marble. The wood has been carved with patterns that suggest cultural significance, shaped by hands that understood beauty as something more than mere decoration. As the old man prepares to leave without protest, Taiwo notices how his steps seem to follow invisible pathways across the courtyard, how he automatically avoids areas where the irrigation system creates softer ground, how he moves like someone navigating familiar territory rather than unknown terrain. The guard's certainty about what's happening here begins to crumble like sandcastles at high tide. The escort from gate to street takes less than 5 minutes, but those minutes stretch like hours in Taiwo's memory as he walks beside someone who somehow seems more at home on these grounds than the woman who's leased them for her celebration. Papa Emeka's departure is dignified and unhurried, lacking the defeated shuffle that usually characterizes people caught trespassing on property they can't afford to legally access. Instead, his movement has the careful pace of someone saying goodbye to something precious, taking one last look at architectural details that matter to him in ways the security guard doesn't understand but can't ignore. By the time they reach the main road, Taiwo was certain of only one thing: whatever just happened wasn't what it appeared to be on the surface, and sometimes the most dangerous mistakes come from following orders without question. The party reaches fever pitch as darkness embraces the estate like velvet curtains, transforming this celebration into something that pulses with its own electric energy. Amara glides between clusters of guests with renewed confidence, her designer gown catching light from fixtures positioned at heights determined by calculations she never made, their placement optimized for both beauty and functionality by an architect whose name she's never bothered to learn. The live band's rhythms pulse through speakers placed according to acoustic principles that create perfect sound distribution across terraces designed by invisible hands, while couples sway on dance floors poured and finished according to specifications written in neat handwriting that bears no resemblance to Amara's flowing script. Every successful party element tonight builds upon foundations she had nothing to do with creating, success stacked on borrowed dreams like a house of cards in a hurricane. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured rainbows across walls that remembered different laughter, different voices, different celebrations from an era when the estate's creator could afford to host his own gatherings in spaces born from his imagination. Amara accepts congratulations on her impeccable taste from guests who admire architectural details she's never studied, praising her for knowing exactly how to showcase features she discovered only when she signed the lease agreement. The hand-carved pillars that draw gasps of admiration were selected and positioned by someone whose calloused fingers she mocked hours earlier, while the perfectly positioned water features that provide the evening soundtrack were engineered by minds that calculated flow rates and acoustic properties with mathematical precision she couldn't duplicate. Her triumph feels hollow as champagne bubbles, but she's too drunk on social approval to taste the emptiness. Children chase fireflies through gardens planted by hands that have long since forgotten what it feels like to own the ground they once nurtured from seedlings, their laughter echoing off walls that hold memories of different children playing in these same spaces when ownership and creation lived in the same address. Amara poses for photographs beside fountains whose placement required months of planning and engineering, her smile radiant as she claims visual ownership of beauty she had no part in imagining. The professional photographer's camera captures her against backdrops that exist because someone else possessed vision she couldn't have conceived, artistic sensibility she doesn't possess, and technical knowledge she'll never acquire. Each flash illuminates another moment of stolen credit, another instance of assumed ownership over achievement that belongs to someone she just expelled like refuse. The evening soundtrack flows from speakers positioned according to acoustic calculations that required understanding of how sound waves interact with architectural spaces, how different materials affect audio quality, how proper placement can create immersive experiences that seem magical but are actually products of careful engineering. Amara's daughter dances in spaces designed to accommodate exactly these kinds of celebrations, her engagement dress catching light that falls at precise angles determined by someone who understood how evening sun would interact with imported glass at specific times of year. The estate's infrastructure hums invisibly beneath the celebration, electrical systems routed through channels planned by hands that held blueprints rather than lease agreements, plumbing that flows along paths designed by minds that understood both function and aesthetics. Wine flows from catering stations positioned in locations that provide optimal traffic flow while maintaining the evening's elegant atmosphere, the placement determined by sightlines and movement patterns that required understanding human psychology as much as architectural principles. Amara raises toast after toast to her own success, her champagne flute catching light from fixtures whose placement required calculations she's never learned, their warm glow creating ambience that feels accidental but actually resulted from deliberate choices about color, temperature, and intensity. The estate's beauty surrounds her guests like a cocoon of assumed luxury, each detail contributing to an atmosphere that makes their celebration feel inevitable and natural rather than built upon someone else's creative labor and technical expertise. The irony grows thicker as expensive perfume as the night progresses, with every compliment about Amara's incredible achievement in securing such a magnificent venue driving the contradiction deeper into territory that approaches the absurd. She's built her moment of social triumph on foundations laid by the very man she humiliated and expelled, claiming ownership of vision she couldn't have imagined, taking credit for beauty she had no hand in creating. The estate's walls stand as silent witnesses to this performance of assumed ownership, their stones remembering different voices that spoke with actual authority about placement and design and the hundreds of decisions required to transform empty land into architectural poetry. But memory, like justice, sometimes waits decades to reveal its secrets, and when it does, The reckoning can shatter assumptions as completely as earthquakes topple buildings built on unstable ground. Midnight approaches like destiny wearing formal clothes, and Amara reaches the pinnacle of her social triumph surrounded by everything she's worked to achieve: the admiration of peers, the envy of competitors, the satisfied glow that comes from hosting an event that will be remembered and discussed for years to come. The estate provides the perfect backdrop for her success, its every architectural detail contributing to an atmosphere that makes her guests feel sophisticated and exclusive. But perfection, like all illusions, requires constant maintenance, and sometimes the most devastating revelations come disguised as morning mail that arrives when champagne headaches make reality harder to deny and truth impossible to avoid. Amara's head throbs with champagne aftermath as sunlight filters through curtains that can't quite block out the harsh reality of morning after night's illusions have evaporated like expensive perfume in humid air. Her designer gown hangs abandoned on a chair like discarded armor, its silk wrinkled and stained with victory that already feels hollow in daylight's unforgiving glare. The satisfied exhaustion of social triumph mingles with physical discomfort as she reaches for aspirin and finds instead an envelope that wasn't there when she fell asleep to the echo of compliments and congratulations. The Lagos State Property Registry letterhead makes her stomach clench with dread she can't name, the official seal seeming to pulse with menace against cream-colored paper that suddenly feels heavy as lead in her trembling hands. Her fingers fumble with the envelope's edge, the paper stock thick and official in ways that suggest contents too important to ignore or dismiss. The morning light streaming through windows seems harsh and accusatory now, stripping away night's forgiving shadows and revealing details her celebration-drunk brain overlooked in darkness. Every surface in her bedroom suddenly feels contaminated by the envelope's presence: the imported marble nightstand, the designer furniture, the walk-in closet filled with clothes that cost more than most people's annual salaries. The contrast between her material comfort and the growing dread in her chest creates cognitive dissonance that makes her hands shake as she finally breaches the envelope's seal and extracts documents that will reshape everything she thinks she knows about success and ownership. The name Emmanuel Emeka Okafor jumps from official documents like accusation written in legal terminology, each letter seeming to burn itself into her retinas as her brain struggles to process implications that refuse to compute. Papa Emeka, the vagrant she humiliated, the beggar she expelled like garbage from her perfect evening, stares back at her from property deeds and architectural plans that bear his signature in neat handwriting she's never seen but somehow recognizes as belonging to someone who understood precision and attention to detail. Her champagne headache intensifies as she traces lines on blueprints that show intimate knowledge of every corner she celebrated in, every detail she claimed credit for, every architectural element that made her party possible. The room begins to spin as pieces fall into place with mathematical precision that makes denial impossible and truth unavoidable. Architectural plans spread across her imported silk comforter like evidence in a case she's unknowingly been building against herself for months, each page revealing another layer of her ignorance about the very foundation her triumph was built upon. Construction permits bear Papa Emeka's official seal, contractors' invoices show payments authorized by his signature, and municipal approvals carry the weight of his professional reputation from an era when his name opened doors rather than closing them. The beggar at her gate wasn't seeking charity, he was visiting his stolen masterpiece, walking through gardens he planted as saplings, touching walls he designed to last centuries beyond his own lifetime. Her throat constricts as she realizes every cruel word she spoke was fired at the very person whose vision made her celebration possible. Her phone erupts with calls that sound like funeral bells in morning's harsh clarity, the ringtone she usually loves now seeming sinister and ominous as her screen lights up with names of lawyers, property managers, and business partners whose voices will carry news she already knows but isn't ready to accept. The champagne flutes from last night still sit on her nightstand like empty accusations, their crystal surfaces reflecting light that reveals fingerprints and wine stains that seemed invisible in darkness but now look like evidence of excess built on foundations she never understood. Each incoming call adds another layer to growing certainty that her triumph was illusion, her success borrowed from someone else's genius, her moment of glory stolen from a man whose dignity she destroyed with words designed to wound. The estate's true history unfolds through documentation that reads like chapters from a book she never bothered to open, revealing a story of creation and loss that makes her stomach churn with something deeper than champagne sickness. Emmanuel Emeka Okafor wasn't just some random architect, he was the visionary who transformed empty land into the crown jewel of Lagos real estate, the creator whose innovative designs won national awards and international recognition. The documents show financial statements from his company's prosperous years, photographs of ribbon-cutting ceremonies where he stood beside governors and dignitaries, magazine covers that featured his architectural innovations. Then comes the darker chapter that explains his current circumstances, betrayals by business partners, fraudulent contracts, legal battles that consumed his resources while corrupt officials looked the other way. The final pages hit her like physical blows, each one revealing another layer of injustice that led from penthouse to street, from architectural fame to begging for water at the gates of his own creation. Papa Emeka's fall from grace wasn't gradual decline, it was systematic destruction by people who stole his life's work piece by piece until nothing remained but memories and the bitter knowledge that his masterpiece would continue earning profits for others while he slept rough under bridges built by different hands. The lease agreement she signed with such pride suddenly feels like participation in ongoing theft, her celebration another insult added to decades of injustice.